This is a really exciting class. We're talking about Seminole Pumpkins. So I want to start by asking who here has ever eaten a Seminole pumpkin? Well, let me tell you, they're amazing. I've actually, it's one of the things we grow here in the summer times, and I couldn't imagine a summer without them. So we're really excited for today's class. So, hello and welcome. My name is Terry Muir and I'll be your host today. We're proud to be able to provide these classes to help learn, get you started into living a sustainable lifestyle. So thanks for joining us. If you want to learn more about our project, please go to sustainablekashi.com. Today we're talking about growing Seminole pumpkins, and this is such an important crop in a hot and humid environment. So if you're living in a wet, hot space, this information is for you. So today we have Tricia Herrera with an amazing friend. She's been part of our community for quite some time now. She comes to our farmers markets and she has taught classes here with us, and it's just so easy to see her passion for this plant. And so it's really nice to have her here today. She has a garden called Trisha's Garden that she's stewarded for 8 years now. And on that garden, she has managed to maintain an heirloom a variety of Seminole pumpkin that we started growing 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful resource and a wonderful wealth of knowledge. So I'm very grateful to have you here. And thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge with us here today.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tricia Herrera. I live in Fellsmere, Florida, which is just across the Sebastian River from here in Kashi, about 15 minutes away. Like Terry said, I moved here in 2012 and I love it. I have a beautiful 10-acre farm that borders the Sebastian River Preserve Park, actually. So I have the blessings of all the beautiful nature, and I also have the challenges that go with nature. So I will start giving a little history about me. I was born in Maryland. My parents loved gardening, so I was gardening with them constantly for as long as I can remember. My father worked for the federal government, so we moved around a bit and ended up settling in South Florida in the mid-70s. That's my history. Now, a little history about the Seminole Pumpkins. The Seminole Pumpkins were documented here in Florida as early as the 1500s by a Spaniard who was being held captive by the native Florida Indians. Once he was freed, he went back to Spain with seeds of the Seminole Pumpkins and spoke of their wonderful qualities and their wonderful things that they had to eat here in Florida. So we know that they go back quite a ways. It was a main source of nutrition for the Seminole Indians. They could eat the seeds, the blossoms, and the fruit, of course. The pumpkins have a very thick skin, so they're resistant to most insects, and that also makes them able to keep for almost a year, sometimes even longer. It was a main source of their nutrition for that reason. They would store them and eat them throughout the year through the lean times. I have found after about 3 months they start to decline in flavor a little bit, but for the most part it's a great staple food to have in your garden. They're resistant to most pests that would attack your squash, like squash vine borers and different pickle worms and that sort of thing, which makes it much easier to grow here in Florida with our vast variety of pests that we have. I started growing the pumpkins in about 2008 when a friend of mine gave me a small little sprout. She said she wasn't quite sure what it was, but someone gave it to her and said it was a very rare native Florida vegetable. So I started growing it, not knowing what it was. And I got 2 pumpkins from my first crop, and they were delicious. So I planted seeds from those 2 pumpkins. From there, I planted about a dozen plants and got over 300 pumpkins from that small little pumpkin patch that I started. Well, what started as a small pumpkin patch left the garden and climbed over the garden fence and up into the Florida hollies that were surrounding the property without me knowing it, till one day I looked up into the trees and saw dozens of pumpkins hanging down. So that was super cool. The native Florida Indians used to call them Chasahawitzka, which translates to hanging pumpkin. And there's actually a river north of here called the Chasahawitzka River, which I don't know if there's still pumpkins hanging around there, but if anyone goes canoeing in that area, that would be great to hear about that. So I'm growing them for about 2 years, not even knowing what they are. I reached out to everyone that I thought might know, and I heard all kinds of answers. They were Spanish calabaza, they were all kinds of things, but no one said Seminole pumpkin until a very dear friend was touring the rare plant section of Fairchild Tropical Gardens in Coral Gables in the Miami area. And she came across a beautiful vine with a pumpkin hanging off of it. And there was the name tag, Seminole Pumpkin. So now we knew what it was, and we could really start learning a little bit more about it. That was quite a few years ago, and there was not much information to be had. What I did find was a very old article from the University of Miami describing the orange. It was more of an agricultural article, and describing the positives of the Seminole pumpkins, and describing that there was 3 distinct varieties of Seminole pumpkins throughout the state of Florida. The one that I was growing was called the Ingram Billy variety, named after Chief Ingram Billy from the early 1900s. So that is, from my research, I have found that to be the most flavorful, best eating quality of the 3 pumpkins. It's also one of the smaller ones. It looks very much like a regular pumpkin, but smaller. They average about 2 pounds, and they're delicious. Let's see. The Seminole pumpkins are now considered an endangered Native American vegetable. They're listed on the Slow Food Arc of Taste list of endangered vegetables. The reason that they are endangered, one of the reasons, the main reason, is when the United States decided they did not want the Native Indians in Florida anymore, when they wanted to round them all up and send them to reservations. One of their main ways of doing that was to destroy their food sources. So they would go through the hammocks where the natives were growing these pumpkins up into the trees, the Chasahawitzka, and they would destroy the pumpkin patches, sometimes shooting the pumpkins out of the trees for sport. Well, of course, this was not, terrible. Let's just leave it at that. But some sources say that the last Seminole War was started when Chief Billy Bowlegs of the Seminole tribe went to the fort to meet with the commanding officer of the United States troops that were wreaking such havoc on their land. And he demanded an apology, and he demanded restitution for the crops that were destroyed. Well, they laughed at him and sent him on his way. And that was the story has it, that was the beginning of the last Seminole War, which was the most brutal war, which the most will say that the Seminole Indians won. The remaining Indians stayed lost in the swamps, lost in the Everglades, and then the troops kind of were less persistent about chasing them back to Oklahoma at that point. And I guess they kind of considered it a draw, but it was really a loss for the American troops and a win for the Seminole Indians, but they had lost so much at that point. it wasn't really a win. So I've been on a mission to try and bring back these beautiful vegetables and have people growing them. They're not nearly as rare as they once were. It's very, very easy to find great articles online about Seminole pumpkins. Back when I first started growing them, you'd never talk to anyone that was familiar with them. And now they're much more commonly grown here in Florida, and I'm thrilled for that. Let's see. Best part about them is eating them. And they're delicious, taste very similar to a butternut squash, but a little bit sweeter. So where you'd be tempted to maybe sprinkle a little brown sugar, you don't need to do that because they have enough natural sugar that they're very, very sweet. I've used them in so many different recipes. They're delicious grilled on an open fire. They're also great roasted. I've made Seminole pumpkin cornbread. I've made polenta with the pumpkin mixed in, which is delicious. Seminole pumpkin hummus, which I think some of my friends here may have tried before. Different cakes, and pumpkin soup, of course, is an absolute favorite. If you do have an abundant crop, which often occurs, I've gotten hundreds of pumpkins from, just a single pumpkin patch. They send out runners, and each runner can produce several pumpkins. So if you do have an abundance of them, you can cook them and then freeze the flesh for later use. And it's delicious. Let's see. It's quite easy to grow. I mentioned it thrives in a composted soil. My most successful pumpkin patches have started from pumpkins that have been tossed into the compost pile. They really thrive from that. They do not need extra fertilizer or care, or usually they don't need water. They will benefit from a little bit of afternoon shade in the dead of summer, like all of us. And let's see. They're very fast growing. So if you have children that you're gardening with, instead of starting a little teeny tiny tomato seed and waiting months to have anything, put a pumpkin seed in the ground, and 3 days later, you've got a decent sized plant that's growing like crazy if it's in an environment that it likes. So they're not fussy. The only thing they really do not like is cold. So if you're north of where we are here, or even if you're in this area, you would want to plant it on the south side of your house or on the south side of your garden, where it does get some protection from the cold, because freeze is no bueno. It just it dies, and that's that. And once it's frozen, it will not come back. I normally would say, send me a self-addressed envelope, and I will be happy to send you some seeds. But one of the joys of living where I do is that I have lots of wildlife. One of the challenges is they like the all-you-can-eat garden buffet that I have provided for them, and they completely wiped out my pumpkin patch this year. So if I do not have seeds to share, but if you go to Mary's Heirloom Seeds, she has a good supply of Seminole pumpkin seeds. I reached out to her, and she has them, and she's a lovely lady that is from Florida, but now is out in California and has a great variety of all heirloom seeds. So that's what we want to be growing, so we can save our seeds from year to year and keep our garden sustainable. Let's see. I've had some great experiences when I first started growing them. I had and realized what they were. I was lucky enough to be involved at the farmers market down in Palm Beach Gardens. Lovely market if you're down that way. And I would bring my pumpkins and plants and seeds to share with everyone, and really got to spread the word. One day when I was there, a gentleman approached me about making a video, and his name is John Kohler from growingyourgreens.com. and he made a video about the Seminole Pumpkins, and he interviewed me, and I gave my little speech. He posted that online in the end of 2011. And I gave my email address at the end, and I got hundreds and hundreds of responses from people all over the world who are interested in Seminole pumpkin seeds. And as of today, I haven't checked recently, but as of recently, the last time I checked, about 6,000 plus people had viewed the video. And all these years later, I still get responses from people. So it's a super cool crop. I hope everybody gets a chance to try growing it. And I think I've
Excellent.
told everything I have for now.
Excellent. So that is so wonderful. It's the Seminole pumpkin is one of my favorite crops here in Florida simply for the abundance of it. And I remember sitting around a campfire and we were looking at one seed and we were cooking Seminole pumpkins and we had counted 326 seeds in this one pumpkin. So we actually did take the time to count each one of those seeds. And we started thinking about how much food you could actually grow from those 300 seeds. Yeah. And if you grow 10 to 15 pumpkins per plant, I mean, it's just thousands and thousands of pounds of food that you can grow from one seed. So the amount of abundance there is just absolutely amazing. So any hot tropical wet environment should really have this on your garden palette as a survival crop. So I really wanted to ask you a few questions. And the first question is, of course, after we get these seeds, and thank you for sharing that link, what is your favorite way to start a new garden?
Good question. My favorite way to start them is I like to start the seeds in a small 4-inch pot and wait till that germinates before I transfer that into my garden. That way I know that the seed actually germinated and Mr. Squirrel or Mr. Bunny or somebody didn't come eat the seed. Now, I think what the seeds like best is to start out in a compost pile versus the transplanting. And if you do start it in a 4-inch pot, as soon as you see 2 nice leaves, out to the garden. As soon as you know it's germinating, it does not want to stay in that 4-inch pot, and it won't thrive. So the sooner as you can get it out to the garden, the better, the happier it will be.
Mm-hmm. I made the mistake of trying to start some in a seed flat, and I just put a whole bunch of seeds in a seed flat, and I came out the next morning and every squirrel and bird and everything loves to eat those seeds.
They're delicious.
They're delicious. Yeah. That would be my next question is, do you roast the seeds and eat those?
I do, absolutely. I roast them with just a little bit of sea salt, just lightly roasted. Don't overdo it. They're delicious raw also. And I have a little furry friend, my dog, that loves the seeds, anything that drops on the ground. And the pumpkin is actually great for dogs. My vet recommended it, and I was like, oh, I grow pumpkins. I can do that. So as soon as she smells them roasting in the oven, oh, Mom, I'm here to help. I'm here to help. So I make homemade dog food, and I incorporate the pumpkin into the dog food.
Oh, that's fantastic. I've never thought about using it as a pet food.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's so versatile. Absolutely. So versatile.
Thank you.
You can make flour from the pumpkin seeds also. I have not done that, but I've heard of it.
Ooh, sounds like a fun experiment.
For you to do, yes.
So now we've started these seeds and we've got them in our beautifully composted, well-drained soil in full sun. Mm-hmm. How long does it take to grow them, and when do we know they're ready?
It does take a couple months for them to get going. Certain times of the year, they'll start out slower. If you start them now, this is primo time. They're really gonna thrive. A couple months, you'll start getting blossoms, and then the pumpkins. They're edible at all stages of development. If you have a little ping pong ball sized one with a blossom attached to it, harvest it and eat that up if you want to. It's an Italian delicacy to stuff the blossoms. That's an option as well. So you can eat them green all the way up to orange. I like to harvest them just when they show a hint of orange. I know they're not going to get any larger, and I believe that by harvesting them, it encourages more pumpkin production.
Oh, that makes sense. Like a tomato or a pepper.
Now, some people think if you leave it on the vine till it's completely orange, it's sweeter, it tastes better. I have not noticed that.
Oh, wow. I really love having your almost decade of experience growing this crop and focusing so closely on it to get your experience. Have you had many pest problems that you've had to deal with over the years?
Besides the deer,
Oh,
not too big giant pests. I do spend a lot of time in my garden, so I'll go out in the morning and I'll look for pests. A telltale sign is if you see a leaf bent over, sometimes you open it up and you'll see a pickle worm in there. They're just little green squigglies, and toss them to the birds, toss them in the fish pond, just toss them away from the pumpkins.
okay.
They're somewhat resistant to squash vine borers, which will go right into the vine. They bore a hole, drill. You'll see looks like wood shavings from a drill next to the, around the hole, and that will kill the vine. So you really want to look for those. If you do see a plant that looks perfect, and then you've got one vine sticking off that's completely dead, look for the telltale sign of the squash vine borer. And if you cut the vine before where you see the hole where the borer is and split the vine in half, you'll see that little bugger in there. And they're creatures like all of us, but if you want to grow a nice crop of pumpkins, you don't want squash vine borers.
And you're finding hand removing is the best way?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I haven't used a chemical pesticide ever, so.
Wonderful. Now you had mentioned deer. What have you found to beat the deer?
I'll let you know. I'll let you know. I've tried pretty much everything. Human hair. I save my little furry dog's hair that I sprinkle around. I've purchased blood meal, which is literally dried blood, which is high nitrogen, so it's great for your crops. And apparently they don't like the smell of it. But
no success.
No success. And I don't know. I think they're a little greedy. They've got 27,000 acres behind my house, but they like it.
If anyone has a solution for deer, please add it into the comment below.
Please, yes.
Excellent. Now, do you fertilize? Do you ever have to fertilize your Seminole pumpkin?
No, I do not. They're just normally growing. They start out in their nice composted area, and then they just vine out all over the place. They'll send down little roots along the way, which I assume they get their nutrients and their water from. But that's really just growing over the lawn or the pasture, wherever they've decided they're going to go.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
they will travel and travel and travel. They'll go over the fences and they'll go over the places. You can kind of train them, turn the vines back in if you're trying to have a more neat, tidy bed. If you're a tidy, neat gardener, this might not be the crop for you.
Yes, I've run into that challenge of trying to get a Seminole pumpkin bed really looking good, and it just sprawls so much. And it doesn't make the best ground cover. I've used it as a summer crop to try but it kind of grows with the grasses, and it allows all the grasses to come up. So it's nothing like a sweet potato mat or a
correct.
Even like the cassava will come up and shade the whole area. But the Seminole pumpkins, they play well with others, and they just let everything kind of grow with them.
They do. They're not ideal for a Three Sisters, environment. They're kind of like the pushy older sister that takes over. So I have had very good luck growing them with sunflowers and with corn. So what I'll do is I'll start the sunflowers or the corn in the center a week or two before the pumpkins, and then I'll grow the pumpkins around the outside of it. And that has done very, very
Oh,
well.
Florida Three Sisters.
Yeah,
Very
well,
nice.
two sisters.
It's a smaller family.
It's a much smaller today,
Now, you had mentioned that there's 3 variety of Florida Seminole pumpkin.
Yes.
And you told us about the Ingram Billy. What do you know the other 2?
The other 2 don't have as illustrious names. They're more, and I apologize, I should have this information for you. They're more named by their shapes. And I will get back to you on that. I will get back to you on that because I do have that literature from that 1950s University of Miami article.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And so now that you've harvested them, you've cut them off the vine, how long can you store them?
I have had them last over 2 years. Do not put them in the refrigerator. Make sure you have them in a nice dry place, shady, maybe on a patio if you have a shady patio. And keep an eye on them every once in a while. You may have one succumb. If it gets a blemish or, say if you drop it and it gets a little mark on it, that one may be more likely to decompose earlier. So if you ever damage one, that'll be the first one in the kitchen. Use that one first. But the undamaged, perfect pumpkins last for a very long time.
Yeah, I've noticed that, especially when storing them together, if you have one pumpkin that starts to mold or get soft, it'll kind of spread out to the other pumpkins.
Oh.
So it's really important to remove any of the bad pumpkins from the group. We usually, when we harvest about 300 or 400 pounds of pumpkin every summer. So it's a very huge crop, and we'll keep those crops all through the year. And it's just such a wonderful food. And I really recommend it into every Florida.
Absolutely.
Can you share with us your favorite recipes?
Oh my goodness. Well, I would have to say my favorite recipe, the best thing I ever made was polenta that I made with corn that I grew. So that was a real treat. That was absolutely delicious. But I just add a little bit into everything. It's very good in cornbread. It just adds a little sweetness and a little moisture. Oh goodness. Just grilled with a little salt, a little olive oil, put it on the grill. That's delicious. Get the nice grill marks on there. It's really, really good. And it's so sweet that the sugars, crisp up.
Okay.
So it's very nice. Let's see, I have a couple other recipes that I wrote down here.
Oh, nice.
Let's see, delicious in soup. Let's see, the hummus is really good. If you make homemade hummus or probably even store-bought hummus, if you just add maybe a cup or half a cup, depending on the amount, swirl it in there, it just adds a nice texture and sweetness to it.
Excellent.
That was a big hit here at Kashi last year.
Yes, I've had that hummus
prior.
and it was fantastic. Highly recommended. So, have you ever interplanted it in the garden with other plants?
I have tried.
Besides the two sisters.
I have tried, but it takes over. It really, really takes over. So I have usually just give it a space of its own, far away from everybody else, and let it do its own thing.
And what size do you recommend?
Of a planting area?
Yeah.
Big. Big and bigger. The smallest area I would recommend would probably be about maybe 15 by 15. So that way you can just keep weaving it back into itself. But you've got to, it can travel 1.5 feet in 2 days.
Wow.
I've heard people say faster, but.
And how large would you say is the largest plant you've seen, like the longest run?
Oh my goodness. I started one plant. It was even a volunteer. I didn't even plant it. And it sent out so many runners. It was probably, I'm not great at measuring. I would say I probably contained it to about 60 by 60.
One plant.
And cross my heart, Girl Scout promise, it sent out all kinds of runners. I got over 300, cross my heart, Girl Scout promise, pumpkins from that one. So when you were talking about the one seed,
wow,
we could feed the world.
The plant that could feed the world.
Absolutely.
What
It tastes good.
I think you just named our class.
Yes, yes, absolutely. There you go.
So we're talking about recipes, and one of my favorite recipes to add with these is rosemary. And I happen to know that you grow a lot of rosemary. I was hoping you would tell us a little bit about your farm and what you do there.
Well, my dream ever since I was a little girl was to have a farm. So I have 10 acres, like I said, that backs up to the forest. So I have a lot of animals, I've got 4 cows, 5 goats, 2 cats, 2 horses, and a dog. Sorry if I'm forgetting anyone. The livestock is all for entertainment purposes. Nobody gets bred or eaten or anything like that. They all have names. So what they do contribute in vast amounts is fertilizer. So I've got, the composted cow manure with the goats and so it's in the horses and everything. So everything gets collected and combined and add in some nice big wood, some oak limbs that have fallen down, and everybody cooks for 6 months or so, and then it becomes addition to the garden.
Fantastic.
So don't need to purchase soil, just keep amending and raising up, no till.
Beautiful. And what are you growing mostly?
I had an awesome winter garden, all seeds from Mary's Heirlooms. I had great success with bok choy, my favorite vegetable now. I hope you're growing it here. Fantastic success with peas. I was shocked the deer did not have any interest in eating the pea vines or the peas.
Interesting.
I can't stay away from them. They're so delicious. I had great success with carrots, great success with parsnips for the first time ever, and very good success with beets. So I had a great winter crop. Now I'm letting everything go to seed so that I can harvest my seeds and be ready for next year.
Continue the cycle.
Yes, broccoli seeds are super cool. If you haven't let your broccoli go to seed, do it.
And I remember meeting you at our farmers market, and your stand is just so beautiful and just so really nice. And I understand you just started in the Vero market.
I will be starting on May 1st at the Oceanside Green Market on Vero Beach at Humiston Park. And there I will have beautiful rosemary topiaries, which I have been making for 3 or 4 years. That's been my hobby while I've been growing pumpkins and rare Peruvian peppers. And I'm looking forward to having my stand there, and hopefully people will come visit me and talk to me about their gardening experiences and gardening in South Florida. South and Central Florida, I guess we are here, right on the edge.
Tricia, it's so nice to have you share your knowledge with us. And is there any contact information that everybody can get in touch with you?
My email is triciasgardens@gmail.com. And I'm on Facebook at Tricia's Gardens. And there you can see lots of pictures from the farm and crazy animals. The latest video is my identity challenged cows that think they're dogs that chase the garbage truck every Friday. So if you'd like to see crazy cows chasing the garbage truck, my farm is the place to go.
I have to log into that.
It's hysterical. Got to watch it till the end. The end is the best part.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your years of knowledge with us.
My pleasure.
It's an honor to have you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy, for running our production on this. You really help us keep everything running here and really bringing this information to everybody. It's just an honor to have you behind the production side of all of this. And thank you, Tricia, and thank you for everyone being on. We wouldn't be able to do these calls without you. The Seminole pumpkin is such an important plant for me in the garden. But more so, it's a teacher that every place has the perfect plant. And Florida summer, just the Seminole pumpkin, when you get 300 pumpkins from one plant, you found the right plant. And I think that's part of the conversation we're all having with nature, is to listen and to observe and just see what works in your area. And maybe it's the Seminole pumpkin, or maybe it's a different plant that's going to really just bring your life into abundance. So thank you for joining us today and for having that conversation with nature. And I look forward to seeing you all next time. Bye.
Bye.